It's like watching a scene from a horror movie, seeing the wreck rise up from the seafloor.
Don't tell me it's going to go in the water.
I know many of you have a fear of the sea, and that fear is called thalassophobia. Trust me, I've got that fear as well. But I need you to have a little bit of courage with me right now, a little bit of strength, because we're about to deep dive 7 levels. And you need to stay to the end as well, because the sea might be home to something else.
This is good news. We can finally do what we were meant to do. Be who we were meant to be.
Before I get into today's video, I just wanted to remind you that this video is for educational purposes only. All the information I've gathered is from very public sources. Let's deep dive into the first level, which I like to call the surface. And of course, many people enjoy the surface. You have people that go on boat trips, you have people that surf, and those people on those boat trips may even jump into the water. For me, that's crossing the line because I've had too many experiences in the sea. It even goes as far as when I'm playing a game, if I come across a water level, if the level is maybe 2 levels in, 3 levels in, I'll probably stop playing that game. Even if I'm on holiday, I'm not going to go in the sea. I've got a rule of shin high only. I've seen people be abused by the sea. I've seen my cousin get punched by a wave. No word of a lie, he was in the sea, splashing around, having fun. But he didn't realize the waves were 6 feet high and they were violent. And he was just having fun. And it kind of made me question things like, do I get in the sea now because he's having so much fun? And then he tried to come out of the water and I'm seeing him dragging his feet. He's calling me over. Behind him, there's a rogue, violent wave. And I just see it crashing towards him 100 miles per hour. So it was like a damn cartoon. And he turns, wave hits him. He disappears under the water for about 3 seconds. Later on, he told me, he goes, you know that wave that hit me? You know, it knocked me out for like 3 seconds. I said, I know it did. He goes, no, you don't understand. I was under the water. I was gone for about 3 seconds. He sounded a little bit traumatized, but he was back in the water the next day. And then I think about the people that like go on ferries and stuff. And of course, you know, a ferry is relatively safe. But I just think, you know, it just takes one time for something to go wrong and then you're at the whim of the sea. And it's a thing, like people back in the day, like Vikings, how are they navigating these storms? They've got no weather systems. They're literally doing it all with their eyeballs. And you know, there was times they were getting it wrong. They're going to go out into the sea thinking it's all good. It's going to be a nice sail. And it turns into a vicious storm that probably sunk many ships. Just imagine for a second that you're on a ship. You think the waves are going to be calm and steady. Bit by bit, the waves become violent and turn into something like this. Another thing as well, which is pretty violent, is tsunamis. Just imagine like a tsunami hitting the city, and it's not just the fear of drowning and then being dragged out back into the open sea. It's the fear of being impaled. It's the fear of drowning in the muggy, dirty water. It's the fear of being stuck underneath something, and it's just a grasp away before you can get freedom, but you can't get it because there's so many things around and clutter. Your house being taken, all your possessions. Like, it's a tsunami is one of the craziest natural disasters out there. There's a guy in Russia that manages to catch a tsunami on camera, but it's not your average tsunami. It's a tsunami that's kind of contained. It kind of reminds me of like when you do waves in the bath and it will splash and then come back, because basically it's being contained in some ways by a mountain. So you can see the violence of the tsunami and how far the mountain is going. And you could actually, predict that if there was no mountain there, it would cover the entire land.
Волны цунами. Ё-моё!
Now, as much as I may hate the ocean, I was interested to know how tsunamis work. Of course, they work like something about the plates, the tectonic plates. But I just wanted to understand the physics of it properly, like to see a demonstration of how it works. So the next video is going to explain that for you.
To demonstrate tsunamis using this small kind of model in the lab, we get some water. It's green because it's St. Paddy's Day, but the tectonic action or the movement of the ocean floor is what causes a tsunami. So the wind is just where you add wind across the surface, and that's going to cause ocean waves. However, tectonics is going to create a tsunami. So you have to move this model up and have this large amount of water displacement, as you see, where the whole section of water is moving as one. You do get various wave fronts that are created because of the reflection and the dynamics of the energy through the water, but you get this whole ocean being moved because of water displacement caused by ocean floor movement, which is caused by tectonics.
Now, don't get me wrong. Of course, there's many beautiful things about the sea, like visually, like if you go on holiday, or audibly. If you go on a holiday, you can see the waves coming in, you can hear it crashing. It's a peaceful, blissful experience, but you need to understand that the sea is a dangerous place, and some people do not understand that. They face the danger and they absolutely love it.
This news station was broadcasting a massive tsunami when they caught a person surfing the wave.
Now we dive into level 2, which I like to call the hunting grounds, or which you probably know as the Twilight Zone. Now, when I say hunting grounds, you're probably thinking about apex predators, sharks, shark attacks, and you might be right. But What I'm about to show you now blew my mind to high heaven. I can't believe what I seen. Imagine you being on the water, snorkeling, living life, and this happens. How horrifying is that going to be? So then, of course, we have things like natural disasters on the water. You wouldn't think of it. But then we've got apex predators as well. And it's not just like apex predators, okay, they're fish in the sea. Sometimes these fish decide to check you out. Just imagine for a second, you're underwater, you're by yourself. And how it works underwater, you can't see too far ahead of you. You can see shapes, maybe dark patches, and maybe the dark patches are just a figment of your imagination. Maybe it's nothing. But then at this particular moment, you look into the distance, you see a dark patch, and it happens to be something. And not just something, it happens to be a great white shark. What you gonna do?
So I've watched that footage about 400 times now. It still hasn't sunken in how lucky I am to walk away with all that without a single scratch.
You see, this is why I fear the sea. And as much as I may fear it, I still love the mystery of it. But it's not a mystery I really want to explore myself. When it comes to sharks, like the one thing that I like about sharks is their biting force. Imagine the world's strongest man. A shark has the biting force of 20 of that man. That's how strong they bite. And we humans can bite pretty strong. And then to add to that, with their teeth, even just a small nibble, you're finished. So imagine that chasing you. Is the risk really worth it? It's like, you got to think about the sea like the hood. You have to go into the sea with a burner, a knife, a grenade. You got to go prepared. And people go in there just like bringing fists to a gunfight. Like that's the perfect comparison. When you go into the sea, it's literally like bringing no arms and no feet to a machine gun fight. That's the best way to describe it. Like you're going into a fight with no arms and no legs, and your opponent has a machine gun. That's the sea for you. See, this is the kind of beef that's happening in the sea. A sperm whale rising to the surface with a giant squid. This next video is another rare video. It's an oarfish coming to the surface, and scientists say when an oarfish comes to the surface, it's because it's coming to the end of its lifespan. Many other people theorize that an oarfish comes to the surface when there's about to be a natural disaster. And it's funny because there was a few natural disasters around the world recently. But I do think it's crazy, and maybe it's a coincidence. I don't know. But I seen this video with the oarfish, coming to the surface. I seen another video with the oarfish coming to the surface. And then Venezuela, Japan, and Russia are hit with massive earthquakes. On the 24th of June, Venezuela was hit by a 7.5. The 24th of June again, Venezuela was hit by a 7.2 because it was a twin earthquake. The 24th of June, Japan was hit by a 6.9. 19th of June, Russia, a 6.6. The 17th of June, the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, a 6.6. So earthquakes just at a depth, basically. 6th of June, Indonesia, a 6.7. And the 8th of June, Cuba with a 6.1. And northern Venezuela, a 4.9. This was aftershock though, innit? But still, I must say, rest in peace to the people that lost their lives to this earthquake, because it was a horrible natural disaster. This is a place where no light goes. The fish that have light live. This is a place where you should not try to swim. It's a place that when you fly overhead and you look down at the sea, you see all those dark spots. This is the midnight zone. I can't even imagine, even if I was in a sub, being in the midnight zone, looking out the window and seeing absolutely nothing. And if something gets a little bit too close, you're going to see it, and then it's going to be gone again. Oh, Mark. It's too vast. It's just too vast.
Past 1 kilometer, all sunlight disappears. We have reached the midnight zone, a realm stretching down to 4,000 meters. Here, there is no dawn, no dusk, only endless night. Temperatures hover just above freezing. The pressure is hundreds of times greater than at the surface. To human eyes, this seems like a world where nothing could survive. And yet, it is here that evolution becomes most creative. Take the dragonfish. Unlike most creatures, it can produce red bioluminescence. To most eyes in the deep sea, red light is invisible, which makes the dragonfish's glow a private searchlight. It illuminates prey without giving itself away. Even more mysterious, its eyes are specially adapted to detect this hidden color. It's as though the dragonfish has invented a secret wavelength seen only by itself. Other predators here are masters of disappearance.
Now, for the people that love the sea, you brave hearts out there, I can imagine this right now is not going to be much of a problem for you. But for the people that share the fear thalassophobia with me, imagine you're already deep as it is. You're in the water. You're walking forward. You realize there's no ground. There's no foundation. You look down and it's just darkness. Get me out. And another thing I imagine is the pressure. And for some reason, I kind of think to myself, it's going to create like a buzzing noise in my ear. But scientists say that it's actually dead silent as space. And I think that's even more scary, because if you're in the deep and, for example, there's a whale, you're going to hear that whale from a distance, and it may be muffled to a degree where you don't really understand what it is. Are you just hearing these sounds in the deep, wondering where it's coming from?
Did you know that the deep ocean is almost as silent as space? At depths beyond 1,000 meters, known as the midnight zone, sunlight never reaches, and sound is muffled by the immense water pressure. The creatures that inhabit this zone live in near total darkness, where the only sounds are the faint echoes of distant sea creatures or geological activity, creating an eerie, silent world.
Oh my God. And I think it's kind of incredible that we have fish on this earth that glow in the dark. In many ways, they're kind of like aliens, and some of them even look like aliens. And then to think they're creating their own source of light. And some of them, the entire fish glows in the dark as well. It's crazy. It is crazy. I will give that to the sea. And as much as I may give that to the sea, I'm about to take it away, because these deep sea creatures keep coming to the surface. And to me, I just feel like it's not a good sign. Why do all these deep sea creatures keep finding reason to come to the surface? The only thing I can think of is that there's something wrong in the deep.
This is the world's first recorded sighting of a live adult deep-sea anglerfish known as the black devil. This species are found in the midnight zone of the ocean around 2,000 meters or 6,600 feet below the surface, and as far as we know has never been seen before. Some people think that when deep-sea fish rise to the surface, a natural disaster is about to happen.
Now, you know in life, there's people that like to go on adventures. And of course, we're talking about the sea, so you probably know where I'm about to go with this. People like to go on rock climbs, they go on hikes, they camp out. Things that are relatively safe, but you have bears and, there's dangers. But because you're on land, you have a lot more control as a human being. There's some people in this crazy world that like to go on adventures in the sea, by themselves, alone, just exposed to the elements. Now, I've got one question for this guy. Thank you for the video. But why, my friend?
It's about to get a little scary. It's super deep here. But the boat's radar picked up an object below me, with a mysterious rope floating on the surface. I'll follow the rope down.
Now we're about to move on to level 4. Level 4 is a place I like to call the graveyard. Now the graveyard is pretty much the same level as the midnight zone, but it's just a place of sunken ships, old history. Now, of course, as you know, the most historical shipwreck of all time is the Titanic. And I think it's crazy, like the sea. You're out in the sea with the greatest ship ever built, the Titanic. It's charging and dominating the ocean, but the sea's like, oh, nope, iceberg.
This was the first recorded footage of the Titanic.
Titanic was first discovered in 1985 by Dr. Robert Ballard and a team of researchers from Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute and Infirmere, a French institution. We returned to Titanic in 2004 with Dr. Ballard to conduct some further studies and scientific research of the site, compare the information that was first discovered back in 85 and 86 with how the site has changed now. We conducted an updated photomosaic of the site, researched the rusticles that are growing on the wreck, conducted high-resolution video imagery of the debris field and the site itself, as well as a map of the wreck.
So imagine you're on the Titanic and it is starting to sink. There's different scenarios. People are going to go different ways. Some people will get trapped and go down trapped on the Titanic. Some people will be on deck. Some people will be jumping off. Like whatever you do, you're going down, because when the Titanic goes down, if you're out in the water, it's going to pull you down, and it's already pitch black everywhere as it is. All the lifeboats are gone. Like, there's no hope at this point. And for the people that don't get sucked down with the Titanic, You're in freezing cold waters in the pitch black with people screaming and with nothing but absolute depth underneath you. So one thing that's pretty sick is scientists have got a mapping system and have gone down into the deep and have mapped the Titanic millimeter by millimeter. So now in the real world, we can see the Titanic as it sits on the seabed today.
There's more Titanic information. A lot more. I just finished watching Titanic: The Digital Resurrection on Nat Geo. Go watch it. If you're watching this today, then it's been 113 years to the day since the Titanic sank on April 14th, 1912. Yet the wreckage remained lost until Bob Ballard discovered it in 1985, so 73 years after it sunk. And even then, only the bow was found. The stern was still unaccounted for. Until recently, extreme depth, crushing pressure, and pitch black darkness meant the explorers could only glimpse small portions of the wreckage at a time, kind of like shining a flashlight into the dark. Until now. 2 underwater robots, Romeo and Juliet, worked 24 hours a day for 3 weeks straight to create the first ever complete digital twin of the Titanic. The resulting data would take 2 full years to process, but now it's finally here, giving us an unprecedented view of the entire wreck of the Titanic for the very first time. It's hard to describe, but seeing the wreck in its entirety is both breathtaking, but also very unsettling. It's like watching a scene from a horror movie, seeing the wreck rise up from the seafloor. The digital recreation is also insanely detailed. That is the Titanic's starboard propeller, which you can clearly read 410, which is the Titanic's hull number. To properly display the model, engineers built a special studio with LED screens hundreds of feet tall, recreating the wreck to actual size and scale. So that propeller you just saw was to scale. The night of the disaster at 11:39 p.m., 3 bells rang out to warn of an obstacle ahead. First Officer Murdoch immediately cut power, but seconds later, the Titanic hit the iceberg. But contrary to popular belief, it was so subtle that many of the passengers didn't even hear or notice that the ship had been hit. Naturally, after this disaster, the world demanded answers from the designer of the Titanic, Edward Wilding, as to why and how the unsinkable ship sank. Wilding, working off very little info, calculated that a series of puncture holes measuring about 12 square feet caused the sinking by flooding more than 4 compartments. The Titanic was built to stay afloat with only 4 compartments flooded. Professor John Key Pike simulated the collision and confirmed that Wilding's theory was remarkably accurate. The iceberg barely grazed the ship, making contact for a grand total of 6.3 seconds. That's it, but that was enough contact to create a series of puncture holes across 18 square feet. But when you see the wreckage, as Park Stevenson put it perfectly, it looks like it had been struck by a missile. That is how catastrophic the damage was. Holes the size of printer paper across 6 compartments caused the Titanic to sink. The other popular Wilding theory that is still talked about today is that the Titanic would have survived if they hit the iceberg head-on. Now the simulation puts that theory to the test, and it is absolutely mind-blowing. The simulation showed the open deck would have crumbled like an accordion due to Newton's third law of motion, which is equal and opposite reaction, but the damage would have stopped just at the end of the open deck. And guess what? If they had hit the iceberg head-on, they only would have lost 4 compartments and would have stayed afloat. Wilding was correct again. The problem is, it's just not human nature to ram right into danger. I mean, if you're in a car, you're not going to hit the car in front of you head-on, you're going to try to swerve out of the way. So I talked about in my last video about Joseph Bell and his 35 engineers who bravely stayed behind to keep the lights on the Titanic. What you're looking at is the remains of boiler room number 2, the final resting place of the Titanic's engineering team. But they didn't just keep the lights on, they maintained power for the wireless room so that nearby ships could be alerted to save the stranded passengers. Then the recreation possibly answered a few more mysteries. For decades, First Officer Murdoch was rumored to have shot himself on deck, with the world labeling him as a coward. But Second Officer Lightoller insisted he watched Murdoch be swept overboard while trying to launch one final lifeboat, dying a hero's death. Now, the digital recreation reveals that the davits, which are the lifeboat's pulley systems on the starboard side, are upright, the position for launching a lifeboat. Lightoller reported seeing Murdoch at 2:15 a.m., so literal minutes before the ship sank. sank, trying to launch one final lifeboat when the Titanic suddenly dipped, sweeping Murdoch and the boat out to sea. The physical evidence hidden for 113 years may finally vindicate Murdoch's legacy as a hero as Lightoller always claimed him to be. And this is where disasters like this don't discriminate. Where the Titanic split in two is also where the majority of the first-class cabins were, where the likes of J.J. Astor and Benjamin Guggenheim paid well upwards of $30,000 in today's money for a luxury suite. It was stated that these men died a noble and peaceful death in their cabins, but the truth was it would have been anything but peaceful, especially looking at this damage. When the ship split, the bow hit the ocean floor pretty much upright, while the stern basically helicoptered down and then corkscrewed into the ocean floor. That's all I have for you. Go watch this doc. It is so nuts.
And do you guys remember Ocean Gate as well, that ridiculous mission? They would have most definitely descended into the Midnight Zone, and the pressure was so great it crushed the submarine within a fraction of a second, so fast their brains wouldn't even have time to register pain. That's how quick it was. I'm not sure why they did it. And it's crazy, you know. The only thing that made it to the Titanic was the debris. And just to think as well, seconds before implosion, there was most definitely a lot of cracking and snapping. And just to be in that vessel, squashed, knowing the dangers, knowing that this could go wrong, and you're hearing the cracks and the pops around you, you're going to be panicking. Like, you ain't going to be calm. Like, everything will be all right. No, it don't work like that in the sea. Now we're reaching level 5. And level 5 I like to call the void. Or we could just correctly call it the abyss. The reason why I call it the void is because it pretty much is. It's just the point between point 4 and point 6. But getting back to Ocean Gate for a second, I wonder, you know, do you think they may have retreated at some point? Like once they started to hear the cracking and realizing things were going wrong? You know, we would never know. Like they could have lost comms and thought to themselves, you know what? We've lost comms, it's getting too dangerous. Let's retreat back to the surface so we can re-establish comms. And in the midst of that, the pressure, you know, got to them. It's something we will never know, but let me know what you guys think in the comments. We've reached level 6, which is the deepest point. It's called the Hadal Zone or Mariana Trench, the Mariana Trench. See, now down here is absolute hopelessness. It's the bottom of the earth. If you're in a submarine that can withstand the pressure and you get stranded, you are stranded. No one's coming to save you. And to think as well, at this level, there is creatures at this level, gigantic creatures at that too. So imagine you're down there and you've got a spotlight that can illuminate the space around you. And then you look into the distance and you see a massive shadow. And you know from experience, from seeing your shadow earlier, that shadow is usually going to be a creature. And it gets closer and closer. And it's some bloody kraken or something. But in all seriousness, just imagine a deep sea creature just coming over to inspect, just being curious, not even coming to eat you, just swimming around you and you just not knowing what it's doing. And then I think the most traumatizing part of that, like say if that was to actually happen, I think would be to see this deep sea creature then disappear into the abyss again. And then not know where it's gone, not know if it's going to go around and make its way to the side. So, you know how we have cures for diseases, and for people, scientists may use an animal to get a particular cure for whatever disease it may be. This could be true for the sea as well. We have 85% of the sea unexplored, ancient creatures that can probably hold all types of cures for the craziest diseases on Earth. And the craziest thing is, scientists seem to have proven this theory to be correct.
We went to the bottom of the Marianas Trench in 2012. Well, when I say we, it wasn't me, it was James Cameron.
Right.
When I retired from the Navy, I got a call from James Cameron saying, or his people, saying, hey, Jim wants you to come out to his house, look at his submersible and evaluate it, wants you to write up what's going on and what he's done. And I'm like, sure, I'll go. James Cameron for whatever, you know. And it turns out that when he went to the bottom of the Marianas Trench, he found a sea lice down there and he captured it. Sea lice in the state of Florida are teeny tiny, nitnoid little, they'll bite you, they'll leave a mark. Bottom of the Marianas Trench, they're like 11 inches big. He grappled it, brought it to the surface. We pulled the DNA sample of it. It's a partial cure for Alzheimer's.
As much as we can conceptualize the sea in its vast state in our minds, we cannot envision it. And I've come across a video from a studio called Meta Ball Studios, and they really do a good job helping you visualize the actual depth of the ocean. And now we're about to dive even deeper, probably into the core of the Earth. We're on the 7th level, which is called home to something else. I always thought there was more to the sea than just fish and waves, because we as human beings, we have dominion, we have domination over this earth. We can touch almost anything as human beings, but the sea is yet such a body that it almost mimics the environment of a different planet. It's a place we can't go, and it makes me wonder, why? Is there a supernatural reason for why we are not able to explore the depths of the sea? Well, a man named Mike Decree decided to take a little trip into the ocean, and he stumbled across something which allegedly got him taken out. Did he discover something he wasn't meant to? Did he speak out about it and he wasn't meant to speak out about it? But soon after he made this discovery, he ended up passing.
One of the strangest places on the ocean's floor was only just discovered in the 1990s. And Mike Degree is one of a handful of people to ever see it in person.
Without a doubt, one of the most amazing things that I have ever seen at the bottom of the ocean. It was while filming for Blue Planets in the Gulf of Mexico. I noticed there's something out in the distance. Couldn't tell exactly what, but it looked like a dark band. And as we approached it, the dark band became a donut. I saw this donut. It was black in the center. What the heck is that? And so, as we get closer and closer to it, I noticed that the black band had what appeared to be kind of steam over it. And then I looked, and there was water lapping against the shoreline. This band was a ring of mussels. And inside the ring of mussels was a lake. It was like, wait a minute, I'm already underwater. We went out over the water in this lake and tried to descend in it and bounced off. It was so super saline and dense that the submarine couldn't go down in it. We literally bounced off, and as we bounced off, we sent ripples heading back to the shoreline. It was insane. I've never seen anything like it.
So my thing is, what if Mike actually stumbled across a portal to a different dimension? The 4th dimension, you could say. Because me personally, I've always had a belief that, you know, those flying light orbs that people see in the skies, I've always believed they came from the sea. People think they come from a different place. But I watched this documentary long time ago, and it was talking about Christopher Columbus, and he had an experience with one of those light orbs, and he said it shot out of the sea. And then when I see Mike Degree's video, it makes me believe there's more truth behind my thinking than fault. And, you know, for all we know, he could have been killed because it may be a long shot. It could have been tied to CERN, because we know CERN has got their scientific experiments with the particle accelerator, and that could have easily been a portal they opened, because I think that's what they were trying to do, but they don't necessarily have control over where the portal is opened.
These are entities that are here on this earth, that have been on this earth, that who knows how long, and that we, you know, we think they're coming in from way out. Maybe they did millennia ago, but they're here and they're in these deep water areas. And that's why, I mean, like we say, we know more about the face of the moon than we do what's going on there. Now, we have a higher propensity of sightings around these 5 or 6, I believe, deep water areas. And so to me, it just, it creates a question there. And then when we have naval personnel telling me that we have these sightings and that there's these underwater craft they're chasing that are doing hundreds of miles an hour, and the best we've got is something that does maybe just a little under 40 miles an hour. So I got a lot of questions about that stuff, and I mean...
Now, there was a meeting of Congress with a guy called Michael Schellenberger. He talks about UAPs in the ocean. They ask him questions and they talk about bases in the ocean. And I think, how ridiculous. Why would there be a base in the ocean? If anything is going to be in the ocean, there's going to be a portal, not a base. Those lights of orbs that we see are not of this physical realm. They literally bend the laws of physics. And then I question myself, I think to myself, how comes all of a sudden they've came out with all this UAP, UFO information? Is it to distract us from the actual problem here? Is that these things are not from a different place. They're actually from here.
Okay, I would like to know, with Immaculate Constellation, how does this relate to UAP activities, Mr. Schellenberg, in oceanic environments? Are there any instances where the Navy or other maritime forces have encountered UAPs that could not be explained by known technology or natural phenomena?
Yeah, the Immaculate Constellation covers both terrestrial and oceanic, and there's actually a number of cases described in the report that occur in the ocean.
And do you believe that there is a concerted effort by the Pentagon to keep Congress out of the loop regarding these UAP activities, specifically in our waters?
Yes.
I think it's about 5% of our ocean that's actually been studied in detail by man, and we've studied more of space than we had of our own oceans. And so are there any accounts of UAPs emerging from or submerging into our water which could indicate a base or presence beneath the ocean's surface?
I don't know about a base, but as I mentioned, I had a different source entirely describe this pretty extraordinary footage that exists of orbs, of an orb coming out of the ocean and being met by another orb.
Some would say
there is a whole story there, but first let's talk about, tell me more about the circumstances that you talked about this week. What did the Admiral disclose to you? When was this? What exactly did he say?
It's been a while. I get a lot of people that want to disclose things to me, and I'm really cautious about it because, frankly, a lot of it is just theory and things like that. When you hear firsthand accounts, and this isn't the first one that I've seen. There's been sonar. I've talked to several different people that have said this thing, and I believe sonar is underwater. So the way our military hides this from us is because our sonar is probably high tech. I don't know. Is more high tech than anybody else. But the odd thing is we want to hide it from the Chinese. But you and I both know, and America knows, that probably most of the components for our double secret sonar is probably bought from the Chinese. So they pretty much know what we got. And there's basically, I've been told there's 5 really deep sea areas that we know more about the surface of the moon than we know about the surface of the ocean there. And you have a lot of UFO or UAP activity there. And people are sighting these things. You're having sailors, you're having different people all across the world. And the numbers seem to be higher in these areas. And that leads you to believe is something traveling light years? Is that even possible in our realm of thought? I mean, you're talking about the light from the closest stars left there before the time of Christ when we see it at night. So, you have to think, well, maybe something is here, and has it been here long? And, and I talk to folks in the Christian community and others that think it's part of the spiritual realm. I'm not doubting anybody's beliefs or anything. I'm not trying to rain on that. I'm just reporting what I've been told multiple times, and this is something I've pulled together. So I believe there's something going on, and our government, once again, is spending tens of millions of dollars on something that they tell us does not exist. And that's why
Representative, can you take us back? What exactly did this Admiral tell you?
Well, the last thing he told me was they're real. He said they're real. It was just me and him talking in a doorway, actually, and he described sonar readings of something, and I believe it was described as large as a football field, and the speeds were just something that we're not even close to being able to do underwater. I wasn't thousands of miles an hour. It was in the realm of a couple 100 miles an hour, but still, I think the closest thing we've got something that does close to 40 miles an hour, maybe, or 45, something like that. I don't know, maybe some of our secret apparatus, but anyway, and this is not the first time this has happened. And they moved at such a speed that it was just not fathomable in our.
And did that Admiral speak about potential alien bases underwater as well?
Well, that was I put all these conversations together, but that seemed to be the realm of possibility, and that he agreed that I did, that something traveling is just not in our realm of of understanding. But again, I had breakfast with a former NASA engineer with a couple of folks, and one of them asked sort of a smart aleck question, sort of pointed at me, saying, well, what about all these aliens? What about these Martians Burchett's talking about? And he turned to him and said, we have uncovered things that we do not understand. They're moving at speeds that we do not understand. They're at angles, stop and go. He said, I don't know if it's a wormhole. I don't know how they are doing it, but they are doing it.
And I know people won't believe it because it's one of those things. You kind of need to see it to believe it. Now, because I already kind of believed that they, came from the ocean, video proof would only confirm my theory to be true even further. So that's what I looked for. You need to see it with your own eyes. Why do they go down there? It's like they don't want us to know where they come from. And it would make sense for them to go there, because they would know that 85% of the oceans are unexplored. Humans just don't go there.
Oye, pero se está metiendo al mar. No manches, allá hay otro.
Ese está arriba, por arriba, ¿viste?
Sí, se va por
¿Dónde
arriba.
salen? El agua, en el agua, velo. ¿Pero de dónde salen?
Está echando humo.
Ahí viene otro, mira. Lo están grabando. Están viniendo para acá, güey. Ya vamos a morir, ya vamos a morir.
Oye, ¿qué onda? No manches.
Y es espalda. ¿Sabes qué? ¿Sabes qué? Es la nueva arma nuclear de... ¡Ahí hay otro, mira! De Pepín, güey. Mira esa madre, y así, es nada más así. ¿Lo estás grabando tú?
Sí, lo estoy grabando.
¿Puedo ver?
Granted, it's not filmed the best, but you can start to see things are starting to add up. The last video almost looks like rogue rockets, but there's no smoke trail. There's no characteristics at all of a rocket apart from the light of it. So there's absolutely no way you can mistake it for a rocket or a flare of some kind. And then to think as well, really deep this for a second, we have so much footage of them flying through the skies, so much footage of them over military bases, flying over the sea, moving at 100 miles per hour, then doing a sudden left turn. We're seeing so many videos, and so much videos, we're able to almost study them. But when it comes to these things going into the sea, it's a rare find. It's almost like I said, they don't want us to know.
Everybody's sleeping, with the exception of our night watch guy.
Don't tell me it's going to go in the water.
Now it's in the water.
I'll be damned. So this is what it does when it thinks nobody's watching. Have you ever seen anything like this?
A Willie Peter flare is the only thing that I know that will hang like that in the air, but that's not a flare because there's no smoke coming off of it. Look at that. It's under the water. I don't know. I've got no answers. Do you?
You think it's got a base down there like we saw on Tampico?
It could be. It could be.
Now, this video is clear and precise. It's not like the previous homemade video. These guys literally watched it descend into the water. And how far down does it go? Did it come back up when they turned their back? What happened next? It's crazy. The sea is so unexplored. If we was to explore another 50% of it, I honestly believe there would be more questions than answers. But I would love to know what you think. Let me know in the comments section below. Thank you so much for watching. If you are a real one and you like deep diving, please subscribe to my channel, and I'll catch you laters.